Okay, we're here. We made it. We did it. We completed the whole the book. We finished it. I did it. Um so I guess like well, what can I say, right? This is this is the end of my journey. Like I don't want to say that, right? I mean, there's still so much more I have left to do, right? And it's funny because looking back on it, I never really expected for the I didn't expect for I guess I wasn't really thinking that I was gonna go this route when it came to like I just wasn't expecting for the things to happen. I was expecting something else, right? Like, I mean, a lot of the focus was shifted mainly on my connection with other people and how I interact with the world rather than like the actual art itself. And it's like, art is life. Life is art. And like, it's just anything and everything that surrounds us could potentially turn into art, right? So I guess like if that's like the kind of mindset one would like to have about it, then it's like okay, that would explain why this was possibly I'm trying to lower the brightness of my thing. I guess like that's why it would things ended the way it did. I guess whenever I started this journey, I really thought that it would solve all my problems. In relating to art, I was expecting, my expectations were set to, have been working on my project and improving my art. And I guess just rediscovering or discovering my voice and how it is that I want to, like, I was just expecting a lot of, like, technical improvement in my art. And I know that like it does say it's a spiritual journey, but that was still kind of like what my expectations were. That's what I had wanted to do this whole time. And I guess it didn't really turn out that way. And I remember feeling like this whole situation that I've been going through was just a detour and it was slowing me down. And I guess I didn't really stop to think about how this is part of the spiritual growth, right? If I don't have faith or respect in myself, how can I expect for my dreams to come true or like expect myself to have that abundance that I would like to receive from my art and the life that I envision myself having, right? If I have if my dreams are high, like set super high enough to like be what others might deem impossible, and if I don't have enough like self-confidence within myself, how would that be like make it make sense? Like how could I realistically achieve those things? And I I already had self-respect. I was already somewhat confident in myself before, but there was still that, shadow side of myself that had doubts and that didn't, the way that I would interact with people, it kind of proved that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable taking up space and making my voice heard. And that's something that I realized was holding me down a majority of my life. I don't even want to say like that's just how I was brought up, right? To be self-sacrificing for others, to make sure to that I'm the one responsible for keeping the waters calm. And if, I wasn't capable of doing that, then clearly, it just was I would just have to suffer and deal with it. That's how my life has been for a very long time. And even now, like it's still something that I suffer with, I guess, just making it known that my feelings are valid. I've always prioritized other people over myself. I've always made everyone's issues and traumas my problem, but I would never give myself the opportunity or have, like, I would never give myself the opportunity to really share my struggles with other people because it felt like no one really asked, so why should I have to say anything, right? And I guess, you know, with all that being said, it's like, I felt like I was doing nothing. And I feel now, I guess, looking back on everything, that my journey wasn't necessarily to take into account like the technical aspects of my art, because I don't want to say I'm like the greatest artist, right? I'm not like I'm not the best out of ever. There's always going to be someone who's like more advanced in like art than I am, and that's completely fine. Like I'm not looking for perfection, although I tend to have like those expectations on myself when it's, I guess, like an assignment or just anything that I'm showing to people, because like you know, I, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Like, it's not that, like, I don't make it competitive, but it's like, to my standards, I look for perfection within, like, what I believe I'm fully capable of. So I try going over the top. Not that I'm trying to outdo anybody, but that's just how I am with myself. If I feel like I can do better, then I'm going to strive to do the best that I can. Although that perfectionist issue that I'm struggling with is like not necessarily the greatest thing I could be doing right now, right? But I just think that the project was postponed for a reason, right? And I don't want to like I do want to actually, like, I guess I think of everything in a very spiritual sense. So it's like everything happens for a reason. So this detour with like focusing on relationships after I'd not been active in my love life for a very long time, like I feel like that was all intentional, because holy cow, did I like do something that I really wouldn't do. Like a past version of myself. I've realized that I don't remember if I actually like discussed this last week, but I had gotten myself into a situationship. I don't even want to say okay, so long story short, I found myself stuck in a relationship that I didn't really get to communicate like openly whether I wanted to be in it or not. So I was into this guy. We're going here now, right? We love it. I ended up getting a crush on this guy. He liked me back, and I had asked him like, what are we? What is this? And he verbally told me that like he wanted to wait it out and see where it goes. So I was like, okay, cool. And I was completely fine with that because, he was just super fun to be around. I enjoyed his company. He was just a really chill dude. But in a public setting, a friend of mine made a joke and essentially asked us like if we were like dating, if we were technically dating, because like as a joke he did a fake little proposal thing. We were actively flirting, and that's like, I'm okay with flirting. That's perfectly fine with me. But after like my friend asked that question, he was just like, yeah. And I felt uncomfortable saying anything like, whoa, we did not have this discussion, we are not dating, right? So I was just put on the spot, felt uncomfortable, didn't say anything when I felt like I should have, and I found myself in a relationship, and I tried to give it hope. I tried to give it an opportunity, but he was not respecting my boundaries. And I would whereas before I feel like I wouldn't have said anything until like it was just too much and I just like popped and I lashed out, right? I didn't do that. Like I was telling him, I don't like it when people do this and that. Please don't do this and that because it will make me do this and that, right? He did not care. He did not care. And it felt like I don't think he was doing it maliciously. It just felt like he was like poking, I don't want to say poking fun, but he was just taking it very lightly when it was a serious issue, and I was trying to set firm boundaries. And this happened a lot, and just like the whole fact that we didn't even communicate like beforehand, that like in advance, that we were going to be together and dating, with that being like, it just, I felt like I wasn't being taken seriously, and it's I was fed up. I was telling him, like, hey, like, I don't really, like, I feel like you're, like, just fucking with me. It feels like you're just trying to push my buttons. And it didn't take me, like, very long to really say anything. Keep in mind, I only knew this guy for, like, a month. Like, I knew him around, last month, like, around early, actually, no. I think it was, like, late June. Late June. Talked to him all of July, and he like we essentially dated for like 2 weeks, and it's like I didn't even want to be in that situation. I'd only known him for 1 week, and it was just like, whoa, we're going way too fucking fast. And he was just, I hope he's doing well, right? I ended up breaking up with him this week around like Tuesday, I believe, and he did not take it very well, but I told him everything that I felt in it, and he still wasn't really changing. He still was just, so I let it go. And I felt bad, obviously, right? But it's like I'm setting like the standard for myself, and like what it is, I'm trying to embody the person that I envision my desired self to be like. So someone who is confident, self-assured, no BS, assertive within, like, but still kind, still considerate. That's what I want to be. That's who I am. No, that is who I am. I've just been so scared to really take up space because I care so much about other people and their feelings. But, if it's at the cost of my feelings, my comfortability, my security, then I'm not going to like risk that anymore. I'm not going to sabotage myself. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for that anymore. And I honestly would like to thank the artist way for that, because I've become much more self-aware. Like before, like I knew I knew what my issues were. I knew my flaws. I knew what it was that I needed to fix, but it's just like I was never put in situations where like I would have to, really change that pattern and get out of it. I would just isolate myself and not, and just choose not to really like do anything. The moment someone would hurt me was the moment where I would just like block and like have them leave my life forever, right? I would make it known that I was very upset without really saying anything in advance and just disappear, right? And it's a lot. It's just like I feel this was necessary, and I'm not going to stop doing the morning pages. I'm not going to stop doing the artist dates. I'm still going to go back and reread the book, because I know like I know there's some things that I probably missed or that I forgot, right? So it's just going to be like a constant thing that I'm doing. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to end it. But this is technically it. And I didn't cry. I almost did. But, when I would cry, it would be on my alone time. Thank you very much. But, this journey was something, I will say. This is, like, the most I've gotten into relationships in a very long time. And it's funny because I didn't even want anything to do with it. And it feels like, this is something, like, important. Like, I guess it would make sense if this is, I I recall being in like, I don't want to say it was like, it technically was my worst relationship and the longest. It was like 7 years on and off, right? And I recall being at the worst state of my life in like the last few years of that relationship. And the moment I got out of it, I I was slowly starting to embrace the possibility of me letting go of the expectations of my family, of the people around me, and to pursue something that I loved. And I remember it was my senior year, and I was in a somewhat, it wasn't the healthiest relationship by all means, but it was the healthiest relationship I've ever had at the time. And that's not really saying a lot, but it was a much better improvement compared to the 7 year relationship that I was in. It was awful, right? But around the end of my senior year, and I was in a healthier relationship, I realized I was like a completely different person. I I remember just telling myself and realizing like I really don't care about the money. I don't want to live my life for other people because my family wants me to pursue this and that. I want to be an artist. I've always wanted to be an artist and I repressed that for so long. You know, I want to cry. But it's just, you know, throughout all of high school, my high school years were the toughest years of my life, right? Yeah, middle school was bad. I was in band, right, for middle school, but a lot of the people there weren't necessarily my friends that I like, or at least it felt like they weren't. It just, there was also this constant competition of people needing to be better than the other, and I was in a very competitive section as well. Turns out, like, I was the only girl, so it was also very sexist. It was a very sexist environment, and I didn't feel comfortable, or just, I just felt like I didn't really belong. And the only time I really enjoyed performing was whenever I was performing with other people, but the moment I had to perform by myself and I knew it was going to be something competitive, I would freeze up, I would get anxious, and I remember crying so much during those years. But high school, I dropped out of band in high school, and although I was taking art as an elective, it was just, you know, I didn't really enjoy my like, yeah, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I felt like I should have. Um, I know that freshman year was probably somewhat the best, but it was cut short because of COVID, right? And hopefully you didn't pick that up, but if it did, someone downstairs just yawned very loudly. Cool. But, it's just after that whole COVID thing, I lost so many friends. I isolated myself. I made that toxic relationship I was in my whole personality, and I lived just to satisfy other people, just to make sure that they were comfortable because I felt unworthy. I don't know. I just didn't respect myself. I I just wanted to make other people happy. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. And even like my parents, my grandparents would always compare my successes to that of my cousins, right? And I remember having such a hatred towards just everyone around me, even though I cared so much. And it's so difficult to admit that, right? There was so much resentment held towards the people around me. Like I was just a very hateful person, as much as I would like not, as much as I don't enjoy saying that, right? I just, it's the truth, you know? I spent the rest of my years just like of high school being so mad at everyone. And yet I cared so much, right? I wanted to satisfy everyone's needs. And I was just very angsty, I guess. But like not even that, right? You know, I wanted to pursue I do remember saying that I wanted to pursue animation, get into the animation industry for so long, right? That was the whole reason. I don't want to say that's the whole reason why I started drawing, but I admired animation. I loved looking at animated shows, movies, comics, anything that involved like just art. I was very interested in it. And there wasn't really an animation program at my school, the one that I went to, but there was another school nearby that did offer those classes like in high school, and they didn't take me, so it was like I was forced to just submit into like the shit that we did have, and you know, the medical like classes were the only thing that was like interesting to me. That's what my cousins were pursuing, and I was actively being compared to them, so I was just like, might as well, right? I mean, it just felt like I said, you know, they were just really bad. It was a very bad moment in my life. But that senior year, I remember crying to my dad in his car, parked outside the house, telling him that I don't want to pursue medical. I don't want to pursue pharmacy. I don't want anything to do with the medical field. I want to be an artist. And I didn't even want to go to college. I didn't want to go to university. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at that point because it felt like I was just digging a grave for myself at the time. And my dad was supportive, right? He told me to pursue whatever it is that I wanted to pursue. And even then, like after that whole conversation, he'd still walk up to me and be like, "Oh, you should get into cybersecurity." Right. So I don't take anything too harshly now, but it's just at some point you stop caring about certain things, and I feel like now it's not just like, I'm not saying this in a negative light, right? But it's just I don't care now about like what other people think. I do care how other people feel, but I'm not really going to, you know, if it's at the cost of if it's at like, you know, if it's impacting me negatively, I'm not going to let that interfere. You know, I'm not going to let it get in the way or whatever. But I'm just, oh my God, I'm not speaking good right now. Me no speak English good right now. Me can't talk. But I'm tired. Yeah, I feel like I said everything that I needed to say, but not really. I'm just holding this out because this is gonna be the last video. Um, who knows? Maybe I might like do some check-ins. I might yap because I do enjoy talking. Right? It's cool. I have enjoyed doing these weekly videos, and I guess, you know, documenting the changes that I go through. I feel like that's just I feel like I might continue doing that. Probably not weekly, maybe, who knows, possibly. But as of now, I have school in a few weeks. And yeah, I'm going to start posting more, or at least that's the plan. I want to work on my actual project now. I feel like for now I should just like relax. I did go through a very, like, you know, even though the breakup was pretty bad, I feel like the aftermath is obviously going to bite me in the ass at some point. Actually, no, I feel like things have cooled down. There was a lot of tension in the beginning. It was a little bit crazy, but I feel like I still need to do some releasing, right? That's about it. That's about it, right? I'm gonna sleep now. It's like I didn't even say the date or the time. Oh my god. Well, don't even worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. I think I'm gonna end the recording now. This was a crazy journey. Pulled a lot of pulled a lot of pulled a lot of huzz. I hated that. Anyways, yeah, but it's whatever. Peace.